My colleague Saurabh joining us in order to get us the latest. Saurabh, take us through what's really led to these protests with people taking to the streets demanding the closure of the Indian High Commission. Take us through the other demands.
Well, this is not something that's developed overnight or has happened suddenly. This is something that's planned, and this is what happens when radical forces take over the streets. There have been news, reports of all kinds of things happening on the streets of Dhaka. Radical Islam mobs, backed by groups like, or links to groups like the Jamaat-e-Islami Bangladesh, Chhatra Shibir, and their splinter groups or their, extended groups is something that obviously have taken over the streets of Dhaka. And, there is, of course, this alliance and there is, of course, this election coming up. And you have someone who's a candidate in these elections who has been shot. That is something that's completely internal to Bangladesh. That's a law and order situation which the interim government led by Mohammad Yunus is responsible for. But there is an attempt here, a larger conspiracy that's playing out, and that is something that has been flagged by those who've been watching Bangladesh for a long time. And that is one, there is an attempt to create unrest to somehow disrupt elections. That is one thing. Secondly, the interim government hasn't so far been very successful in putting an end or putting all stops to this problem. Thirdly, there is also an attempt to somehow blame and connect India to all that's going on within Bangladesh and find an external enemy to pin the blame on for the trouble, the mayhem that's being created on the streets, the law and order situation that's been created on the streets by forces that have always had links to Pakistan. And Pakistan has now stepped up its, its relationship with Bangladesh. The interim government has made it clear it wants to pursue closer ties with Pakistan. And now, therefore, you have a situation where there are minorities under attack, the press is under attack, newspaper offices that have, been there for years are under attack, journalists are under attack, a journalist has been arrested also a few days ago, and all kinds of things are happening, and this is all pointing to the fact that there is an effort to disrupt the elections. And that's something that obviously, many are flagging. And then there is an attempt to somehow connect all of this to India without any evidence, without any basis, without any facts to support that theory. And what's worrying is that, today you have instances in Chittagong where, the High Commission, there are people outside, mobs outside. You've seen that in Dhaka, you've seen that in Rajshahi also, etc. In Khulna, all of these places where, people somehow, those that are out on the streets, the violent mobs that are out on the streets of Bangladesh, and, we all know who these mobs are linked to, are trying to sort of create a narrative that somehow, for all these problems, which are internal to Bangladesh, which of course is the result of flirting with, radicalism and radical groups, are somehow also, linked to India, which is absolutely not the case, which is something that the Indian Ministry of External Affairs has completely denied and impressed upon the government of Bangladesh to ensure a peaceful atmosphere, to hold elections, highlighting the need for Bangladesh to return to an elected government that perhaps can restore law and order.
Absolutely, the death has, completely fueled that violence that we are seeing, taking place on the streets. Take us through, of course, we have heard of incidents of stone pelting that has been reported near the Indian Assistant High Commission. Take us through the demands of the protesters in that regard, but also the media houses that are being targeted.
The protesters are people who have, what we are being given to understand, are people who believe that, that this is the kind of right thing to do. These are violent protesters. Many believe that they are linked to groups like the Chhatra Shibir within Bangladesh. Many believe that they are there out on the streets to create mayhem, that this is a planned and, conspiracy. And, this is something that obviously is there for everyone to see. You see the newspaper offices of Prothom Alo, of Daily Star being attacked. You see an editor being attacked on the streets. This is how the press is being muzzled in Bangladesh. And these are all elements of radicalism. There is no justification for any, of any kind for this kind of behavior. And this is the growing radicalism in Bangladesh that experts have been warning about. Terrorists like Jashimuddin Rahmani have been released from prison. These are people who've always batted for closer ties with Pakistan. In Bangladesh, there is a term called Razakars. Who are the Razakars? They are people basically who sided with the Pakistanis during the liberation struggle. There are groups that sided with the Pakistanis. That includes the Jamaat-e-Islami Bangladesh. And its growing influence on the politics and the streets of Bangladesh is something that has been flagged by many. It's now playing out. This is how radicalism and radical Islam is playing out on the streets of Dhaka. And that's what we are seeing in terms of, the whole development that's going on. But there is, like I said, completely sort of something that's not based on truth, something that's not based on evidence. And that is to somehow link India to all of this, which is to find an external enemy for the problems that have arisen from the growing radicalism within Bangladesh.